Anyway, the content that we're going to be reacting to, it's a video from Avenger 1, and he's talking about Star Citizen Pyro PvP zones, and it's the reality. Because apparently we don't know the reality of it, so Avenger 1's going to be dropping knowledge bombs on us. Going to come over here, turn off the music, and let's find out the reality of the Star Citizen Pyro PvP zones, which I thought was the entire system, but you know.
This ISC episode has caused a little bit of a stir, I guess you could say, within the Star Citizen community. And I want to kind of give you my point of view as an avid player versus player, I guess you could say, aficionado. And the point of view that most players within the PvP community are going to take on these new content updates coming to Pyro, and how I think the future of this will actually play out versus what CIG wants to play out. I think CIG suffers a little bit from the dreamer concept, where a lot of times they design something and they have the best intentions for
Pyro equals Stanton with a different skin, 100%. Oh man. I really hope they market it exactly like that, so all the Care Bears go, yeah, let's go to Pyro, and they all set their fucking spawn points there, their home location of Pyro, and then we just shit on them. Just shit on them from day one. Oh, it's gonna be amazing.
For it. But what reality ends up happening is it doesn't go the way they want, and they don't seem to want to course correct quick enough to really have any kind of meaningful impact. I mean, take a look at what happened with Ghost Hollow, security post Jumptown, and the lack of activity when it comes around. So
these 3 missions, they haven't failed because of poor execution. They fail because we're all separated into little fish bowls, as opposed to us all being in one fishbowl together, right? Like, Ghost Hollow is a good example of a mission that you could do, and it's a PvP zone, and there's a little bit of an attractant there. You can get, I think it's like 300k, you just gotta hold the 2 points whilst the timer ticks down. Anybody can show up, you can get into a fight, but going there, it's really difficult to find anyone. And why is that? Well, because all the people that would be participating in that sort of event all end up on different servers. And the only way that they can really get together on the same server is that they're all on each other's friends lists. And at that point, most PvP players don't care about fucking credits, and if they're all on each other's friends lists, why would they spend all that time going to that one location, die, and then have to respawn somewhere? They have a crime stat, they'll respawn back at Grim Hex if they're lucky. If not, they're waking up in prison and they're taken out of the gameplay loop. But to say like CIG hasn't been paying attention to these missions or anything like that, we haven't seen these missions to their fullest potential yet. Even Jumptown, you know, all the marketing hype that CIG put, you know, behind Jumptown 2.0, their marketing hype didn't work for them. It was players who were, you know, wanting to relive the original Jumptown, and they saw that CIG was going to do a Jumptown and it was going to be a lot more supported, you know, unique, and it ends up being, you know, like this canned shit. And we're all just sitting there going, well, where's the risk? And they're like, oh, well, it's supposed to be for everyone. And it's like, yeah, so was the OG Jumptown, and everybody went there anyway. And CIG has proven time and time again that they can create, well, that there are certain types of events that happen in their game that will bring everybody involved to be involved with that bit of content. Most of the time, it's a bug with the economy. Most of the time when this happens, rating's broken in some way, shape, or form, and players are like literally printing money. All the Care Bears jump on board and they start, you know, trying to make as much credits as possible, which causes all the PvPers to go, hey, there's people that we can go and attack and we might end up in fights. That's literally the formula that CIG is trying to, you know, create here. Each of those things on the screen, each of those names on the screen, is CIG's attempt at that formula, but here's the problem. The payouts are too low. Now we may see in 3.24, like Maze has jumped from, what was it, 90k to 225k per SCU. So we may see in the next Jumptown that they run, because I'm pretty sure they're going to run Jumptown during 3.24 to test this out. We may see an uptick in Jumptown for a period of time. That depends on how much you can make from every other mission in the game. So if every other mission in the game doesn't pay anywhere near as much as what Maze does, and they CIG runs Jumptown, you will see the players flood to Jumptown. But these missions here that are being shown on the screen, they're not failures because CIG doesn't listen and, it was poorly executed. If we had server meshing and we had these missions, that'd be a lot more popular because it'd be easier to find other players. There'd be a reason to go to these locations. The competitive nature of players, the amount of missions available versus the amount of bloody players that are present, it would end up being this situation where there may not be enough cargo hauling missions to be able to satisfy a lot of the players. So some of them will go, hey, I'm going to take a risk, Jumptown's running, I'm going to go try and run some drugs. And all the orgs that want to try and run drugs there, they'll be floating around those areas, locking down the place, and they'll get their fights in that way. Ghost Hollow is targeted at, like smaller groups of players. PK is supposed to be like it's supposed to be more akin to a PvE raid than an actual PvP event. Realistically, SPK and the way that mission works is it's similar to the way that you would consider Jumptown, in that there's a mission there with a bloody box dispenser that shits out boxes that you can pick up and make money from, except it's player activated, as opposed to Jumptown, which is a scheduled event. These missions aren't failures, and they're not an indication that CIG isn't listening in its entirety. Jumptown needs improvement. They all need improvement. But these missions would be a lot more popular if we had server meshing. So the most frustrating part about Jumptown when it's running is the amount of server hopping that you have to do just to find a Jumptown that's got people at it.
Much of what CIG does in the last few years has been good on paper, or at least a good idea, but in reality doesn't take into account human nature, doesn't take into account how people are actually going to play these mechanics and what the future of that will actually look like. And they don't seem to want to learn from these mistakes, so they just keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again, and hopefully sell some more ships to buy them time. But I think myself and many of us, if you're watching this video, probably feel quite similar.
What the fuck is human nature? I don't know the context that his mindset behind what he means by this human nature here, but my interpretation of human nature when it comes to doing things in a video game comes from my military experience, when it's come down to tracking people, scouting, and trying to stay hidden when you're out in the scrub. Human beings are lazy creatures. We will always try and take the path of least resistance to achieve a goal. When you understand that, you understand how tracking can work. In video games, if you make something too difficult to do and the reward isn't sufficient enough, players won't bother. And I believe that's what he's alluding to here, is that which is why he's talked about Jumptown, SPK, and Ghost Hollow. What's the incentive to go there? Credits, but everything else pays out more. So why would you go there? Oh, the gameplay, but the thing that's paying out more credits has more gameplay at it. They ran Jumptown during times where we had the slam rush. Some people doing Jumptown, but people still going and doing slam. People were still running slam during that time because slam was more profitable and you got more gameplay out of attacking people who are part of the slam rush as opposed to going to Jumptown. The goal is gameplay. Players are going to look for the path of least resistance to get that gameplay. Why would I go to an event like Jumptown where it's difficult to find people when I could go to a place like Brios and there's just people streaming in trying to run slam? That's what I think he might mean. We'll keep watching and see if he extrapolates on that or if he's just using buzzwords.
And if you're new to the channel and you're new to these kind of takes, then sit back and enjoy it and, open your mind a little bit, maybe look at things from a slightly different perspective, through what I call the PvP lens. So let's get started. So in the new content update coming out for Pyro, there's two things that are kind of happening. One are called contested zones, which are these areas within all the different stations of Pyro, checkmates, all these other big stations. And what's going to happen is these stations will have essentially, quote unquote, gray zones or contested zones where you'll go through an airlock and essentially the rules are gone. It's basically Star Marine as soon as you walk through those doors.
The rules are gone, guys. Just like every other fucking part of Pyro that's outside of an armistice zone. The contested zones are just literally, it's like a dungeon raid that you can do. And instead of having to go super far out of your way to get to the dungeon, it's at the fucking station. As soon as you walk through the door, it's gun rush. Holy shit. I wonder if that'll actually become a map for Star Marine. If they'll do like a contested zone, like a Pyro Station contested zone map, just so that people can, you know, go in there and do FPS gameplay without the contested zone shit. Like, honestly, I think CIG's just used the name contested zone for these areas on the stations, just so that players are more attracted to go there. Because you got to think about it, what's CIG doing to these contested zones? Nelson hints at it, like they're putting AI there with unique gear and items. You can go in there and you can kill the AI and take the unique gear and items. You might have a mission to do that pays out credits. Like, there's no difference between a contested zone and a bunker mission. That's it. There's no difference between the fucking two. Well, thing is that if you go into a contested zone and there's not much AI in there, Watermelon, that may be indicative that there's already a player group there. And if you go in there and it's full of AI getting around, then you're probably the first lot there. That's what I mean, like, it's not like Star Marine. The closest that it comes to Star Marine is that if you set your med bed to the place where the contested zone is at, you'll be able to get there within a couple of minutes, as opposed to taking 10 to 15 because you've got a quantum travel. Then you're going to lose your kit. You're going to have to re-equip if you die in there.
And the concept I think they're trying to shoot for is a much more raid style game, something like you'd see from Escape from Tarkov, where you enter an area, you go in, you get the loot you're looking for, and you make it out. And once you make it out, you're safe. By making it out, it means that you're able to make it out of the zone and return to the normal part of the station, which are called the green zones, which are armistice zones. You cannot shoot, you cannot be hurt, you're safe, which in my personal opinion is probably a good idea. Because when I first loaded into Pyro during one of the playtests, there were no green zones, and as soon as people left their sleeping cabin, it was immediately engaging on site, and it was definitely a frustrating experience. So I'm glad.
Sounds tired as fuck. I thought he just always sounded like this. Like, I hope CIG doesn't stick with the armistice zone, like the hard armistice zone, and that they do transition to a soft armistice zone eventually. I'm gonna guess that part of the reason why we're not getting the soft armistice zone inside Pyro stations yet is because they're gonna want to do optimization so that the AI can be effective enough that if a group decides to pull out guns and go on a fucking shooting spree, that the AI will just shit on you. Pyro playtest, meh.
Glad that they've learned from that lesson. Now, these gray zones or contested zones within these stations, I don't think personally are going to work like the way they intended. I think what's likely going to happen is you're going to have people camping like crazy. I mean, just people sitting in wait, camping like crazy. I mean, if there's no raid timers and there's no thing to force you to just, you know, to switch position, you're gonna have people sitting at natural choke points, like how extract camping was in Escape from Tarkov, and also the camping that goes on in something like, you know, DayZ, where people spend days just sitting in one spot, just camping and waiting for that advantage. And any kind of death PvP open world survival kind of game, players will always play the way that will give them the maximum benefit for the least amount of effort. And if that means that they have to wait around for a bit until someone comes crawling into their area, they're gonna wait for those opportunities.
Oh my god, Fist is on Avenger 1's team. Holy shit, Dastardly as well. Dastardly killed Old Butter. Two of them on Avenger 1's team. Besties now. Fucking best friends with Avenger 1. I heard they send Christmas card lists, exchange Christmas cards at Christmas time, as opposed to doing it at Easter. Daster Rat. Ratanor and Daster Rat. There we go. Besties with Avenger 1.
Now, sometimes I'm sure you'll get some cool, exciting moments where another team goes in and another team engages, and you have this moment of, I guess you could say, exciting combat. But the reality is most people in Star Citizen don't play together. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up having people walk into essentially a meat grinder, where one or maybe two people are going to walk into groups of player versus player coordinated teams of 5 or more, and it's going to be absolutely vicious. They're going to walk
the players don't play together, right? Like, to be fair, I haven't watched the Star Citizen live, buddy. The most recent one about the contested zones, and that only came out yesterday. So there's a bit more information about how many are there, but there's not many contested zones getting around, right? And players, like the first few, I've already said, like for the first few weeks, depending on how it goes, for the first few weeks, the fucking contested zones are going to be popping, and then it'll peter out. The main thing about this though, it really comes down to how many players can be present on a server. Because if it's like 100 players to Pyro and 100 players to Stanton, then yeah, these bloody areas aren't going to have much traffic, and it's going to come down to, you know, you're going to have the rats getting around just camping areas and just sniping you when you've got all this kit. Come in and grab your kit and fuck off. Or, you know, as he's describing, you'll just have like occasional encounters where you come across other groups. But I think he's kind of ignoring the fact that we're getting server meshing when this happens. So the chances of running into groups are going to be a lot higher. And then there's the AI that's going to be getting around and patrolling the areas. That's something that, you know, game designers do to try and prevent camping in those types of games. If you've got AI present, you'll have the AI patrol around in areas where players will try and camp to get them to move. So, you know, CIG is probably going to push this out there. They'll have some AI there. They'll watch player behavior, and then they'll make adjustments to the AI so that the AI start moving to certain positions, so that players, you could sit in the choke point for a while, but then AI might, you know, decide to walk over to that spot to make you move. Then you got to react to it and, you know, readjust your position.
Into this absolute nightmare where people are going to be camping corners, using grenade launchers to knock each other over, and it's just going to be like essentially these players farming other players for their gear, content, loot, and posting, I guess you could say, their salty takes. And
this just sounds like fucking Avenger 1's got PTSD still from the Pyro playtest, where he's trying to leave the station and he's just getting gunned down over and over again. Like, they're gonna make compilations of me getting gunned down when I'm trying to come in. Fucking campers. It sounds like a River Talk, but with gameplay.
Stuff like that online. Star Citizen is at a weird spot, I find, where a majority of the people who play Star Citizen are not particularly interested in intense PvP all the time. And so what this has done is the culture of Star Citizen over time has driven a lot of the very PvP focused people out, not only due to bad server performance, but also bad game design and bad execution on mechanics that allow PvP to flourish. And so what you're left off with is a large swath of players that are more interested in the very casual experience, the kind of theme park experience. And what's going to end up happening is they're going to start engaging in these gray zones or these contested zones, and they're just going to be absolutely wasted by groups of small coordinated teams of PvPers, which will happen because the reward for being a group of PvPers that know what they're doing and just camping those areas is I get all the loot all the time, and all these casuals coming in, I mean, they're gonna have no chance, like truly no chance.
It almost seems like those who prepare and train reap the rewards of their effort. Fucking, like, yeah, no shit. They're gonna be shitting on casual players. Like, you know what else? Water's wet. Actually, no, water isn't wet. Things that touch water get wet. You get what I mean? Like, no shit. Like people who get upset when a group of pirates show up to pirate someone and they're by themselves and they're like, the hauler should be able to stand a chance against the pirates. It's like, why? They're by themselves. They have no weapons. They're playing by themselves. There's 6 of us. There's 1 of them. Why should they win? Am I reacting? Yeah, the 3 muggers that jump me shouldn't be allowed to carry knives. Like, I don't understand the point of this take that he's got, like sitting there going, yeah, all the PvPers who, you know, train together and practice together and coordinate are going to shit on all the casuals. And I don't think CIG understands that. What? Pretty sure they understand that quite well, which is why there's AI that's going to be in those areas to force people to move around. You know, being in the server meshed environment, more people getting pushed into the same fucking fish bowls means that the chances of PvP groups encountering each other goes up. But you have to log in to fucking have those encounters. And if you're sitting there being salty about the state of the game, of course you're not going to have fucking more PvP encounters. being one of the staples of Mongrel Squad, it's why I have an activity requirement in Mongrel Squad, because you don't get fucking piracy hits if you're not playing the game, right? So if your PvP experiences are being diminished by the state of the game and things like that, yeah, that's understandable. But don't sit there and go, oh, you know, like there's less PvP encounters, so, you know, like PvPers aren't there because there's less PvP encounters. It's like, well, if you want more PvP encounters, play the game more and encourage other PvPers to play the game more. Reminds me of the need 10 pirates for one cargo hauler. You don't have to deal with a big group of pirates who just want one pirate. Yeah, like playing a fucking MMO, it's a group-based game. So of course the group who is better equipped, better prepared, better trained will win. The way it should be. You know, skill should be an element to it. Tactics an element to it, strategy an element to it, you know, like sneaking around, being stealthy, being a rat. Those are all valid tactics and strategies of playing in these sorts of games. But what he's talking about here is like the equivalent of, oh, well, you know, like these 1 or 2 players who don't really do this shit much should be able to go into these areas and explore. But COG doesn't seem to understand that that's going to happen, and then they're going to get shut on by the more coordinated groups. Pretty sure COG will be aware, and they've got an intent, and they're going to execute on it. And they're going to watch, and they're going to observe, and then they're going to make adjustments. The examples is where he tries to bring up Ghost Hollow, SPK, and fucking Jump Down. Those particular event types are before their time. They need a higher player count to be more engaging. The more players you can put onto a server, the higher chances that you have of having encounters at those locations. And it's not going to happen until we get server meshing. So, you know, like DOG making too many changes right now to try and get player to go to those locations. They can try and improve the things that they've got here and not develop anything new to introduce into the game, or bring the new stuff in, leave the stuff that's working for now until the next big technological hurdle is overcome, and then go back to those places and review how they're functioning and make adjustments then. They need real rewards. Nothing in the game matters with gear or components. Real rewards and rare items that are worth a shit ton worth looting. Only if you care about loot. Like, the irony that I find of being a pirate and Star Citizen is that I really don't care that much about the loot. I care more about the encounter, the experience that we're having, you know, the fight that we have. I'm going to chime in on this conversation that's happening in the chat right now between Genocide and Tony. I see the loot as a means to an end. It keeps me going in the PU. I don't want Arena Commander, because Arena Commander is a sanitized environment, right? You don't have to worry about dying. There's no risk to death. There's, like, if you die, you respawn, you're back into the fight straight away. When I talk about the experience of doing piracy, I'm talking about the risk that I'm taking engaging in the act of piracy, in that I can fail and then that's it. That's the encounter done. Need loot, rewards, cargo, there isn't any piracy. Otherwise, it's just, no, it's not AC. See, it's only a means to an end, because I want encounters where the experience is dynamic. When I go into Arena Commander and I go into Gunrush, for example, I know what to expect. I'm going to be fighting other players in close quarters. Okay, the loot is there for me to be able to use that to be able to keep myself going for the next encounter that I have. I'm looking for experiences. This is that you can't get in Arena Commander, because everything in Arena Commander and Star Marine is sanitized. Like, nobody is fighting in a way where they actually care about the risks that they're taking. In the persistent universe, people do care, because they are taking risks. I don't care so much about the cargo as what the target does. So I'm expecting them to fight harder. And for me, and the reason why I don't care about the loot as much, and I don't see it as important, and I focus more on the experience, is because that loot can be wiped. Eve hasn't wiped for 21 years. The devs don't have to wipe you. You can get wiped by other players. Isn't the PU in some sense AC with a 5-minute respawn instead of a 7-second respawn? I'd say that no, because people have different motivations in the PU. Like, if I go to Arena Commander and I go into a Gunrush match, I know what to expect. Everybody's there for the exact same thing. Everybody's there to do Gunrush. When I go into the PU, there are people who are doing cargo hauling missions, people who are doing salvaging, some people who are out there doing piracy, others are doing bounty hunting. There's people out there doing other things, living out their own gameplay. I'm looking for the organic encounters, the organic experiences where, like, we attack a cargo hauler and then their friends show up and it turns out to be this battle, or coming across a cargo convoy and it's like, all right, we've got to strategize on how we're going to take this all down at the same time. and gain the most out of it. See, I'm more concerned about the experience than I am about the loot. Because if I cared only about the loot, I can just do PvE shit and make numbers go big. Anybody can do that. But I care more about the experience. The loot just allows me to keep going. Well, what's meaningful loot though? And what's a better reward? Something that's unique? Meaningful loot? Something that helps you continue on going? Well, no, because value is in the eye of the beholder. There are players out there who consider their kit that they're wearing to be extremely valuable to them. I couldn't give a fuck. As long as the stuff that I'm wearing is practical for what I want to do for piracy, I'm happy. Like, I don't care about picking up Ninetales armor. In fact, the only reason why I'll pick armor to be a certain way is because it helps enhance my combat capabilities. So that's where it becomes valuable. That's the thing, is like, what one person says meaningful rewards or meaningful loot, better rewards and all that sort of thing, I always question that. Because it's like, what you say is meaningful to you may not be meaningful to me. In which case, is CIG failing? Because to me, using that logic, yes, they would be failing, but to you, they wouldn't be. They'd be fulfilling what you want, which is why I always come back to the experience. Because we can all have the same experience from different perspectives and get more meaningful out of it. Better stat rewards, better components, better shields, better QEDs, better guns that can't be bought from an NPC. Yeah, like, I get what you mean there, but once again, like, meaningful loot to one person may not be meaningful to another. That's the point that I'm making there. So you got to be careful when you say meaningful. Anyway, we're getting way off topic here, because we'll still be watching this Avenger 1 video, and we've got another 10 minutes to go still. I still don't understand Avenger 1's point here though. Like, the PvP, like, the organized groups are going to shit on the non-organized groups. Like, yeah, no shit. But CIG needs to cater to the non-organized groups now.
Now, I think it's a good thing for Star Citizen for us to actually have more of this stuff happen, to have more PvP content, to have more opportunities to do it. But as we've seen in the past with Ghost Hollow, Jumptown, and Security Post Korea, is they don't incentivize PvP. The risk does not equal the reward. And that is a huge, huge problem that CIG, after 10 years, hopefully would have figured out by now. But unfortunately, as we can see clearly, it's not been figured out. Security Post Korea still remains extremely, I guess you could say, uninviting in terms of actually getting in there and doing the mission to get the drugs out. Ghost Hollow remains mostly bugged, and the amount of money you get for the amount of risk you have to take is very minimal, so most people just stay away from it. And Jumptown,
so I'll hear what he has to say about Jumptown before I make my point, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna lean into my point even harder.
Makes basically hilariously low amount of money for the risk and effort it takes to do it. Most people just do these events out of sheer boredom to get content rolling, because the persistent universe is quite essentially, for lack of a better word, dead. There's really nothing to do in the persistent universe, and there's
Alright, we made it a minute 30 behind, a bit further. Fucking incentivizing PvP by increasing the risk, right? That's his point here. Incentivizing PvP, not increasing the risk, increasing the reward. Incentivizing PvP by increasing the reward. Here's the problem with that, and we've already had to deal with this before in the past, when Jumptown was paying out the most amount of credits, and you had conga lines there. People just lining up, grabbing their few boxes and moving on. Doing that over and over again. The PvP zone not having PvP happen at it, because believe it or not, the majority of players are incentivized to engage in PvP. And it's not because of the reward. The reward isn't the issue with Jumptown. That money would matter if you lose your ship forever if it blew up. Maybe the player would just go, you know what? Fuck it. I just lost my ship in less than 30 seconds and couldn't do anything about it by this group of 6 people. I'm just not going to play anymore. CIG's job as developers is to keep you in the game and playing as much as possible. And CIG is a lot more cognizant of the majority of their player base's desires than what we give them credit for. You see, if you increase the consequences of failure, you need to make the juice worth the squeeze. So if you're going to lose your ship in such a dramatic way, then what you're risking that for needs to be a lot greater. But PvP doesn't need to be involved in that at all. And this is where I think the fallacy behind this idea that the reward needs to be higher to encourage PvP. The reward doesn't need to be higher. You need to make the reward exclusive to encourage PvP. And what I mean by that is that you need to make the reward or structure the reward in a way that only one group can have it. And a really good example of CIG doing this is actually two. The Platinum Ticket events and the Idris event. The fighting, like, I only managed to get onto 2 Platinum Ticket events. Actually, no, I was only present for 1. We didn't get the ticket then. The second one that I was present for, I was just sitting in the fucking menus trying to join on bloody buff for an hour. But the Platinum Ticket event is a really good example of an event type where if you want to encourage PvP, you've got one event, you've got one item everyone is fighting for. Now, if you want to encourage org-based warfare, then it needs to be a group-based objective that only ends up being something that a group can take possession of, right? And that was the flaw with the F8 Lightning event, is that it was an individual item that needed a group effort in order to get it. And I know CIG was that one person managed to sneak in and steal a ticket from underneath the groups. Mongrel Squad was present during that. And the reason why this person was able to steal it was because nobody knew where the ticket actually was and it didn't update its position. If the position of the ticket was updating as reliably as it should have been, that person wouldn't have gotten out of the combat zone. They would have been gunned down by the 20 people that were fighting above the position. Yeah, they teleported the ticket into some dude's ship and then the market didn't fucking update. Like, the Platinum Ticket event is a good example of an event that CIG could run that encourages PvP. Now, they don't need to do a Platinum Ticket event exactly with a Platinum Ticket or an F8 Lightning or anything like that. Jumptown could be a really good example of a location where seizing the location can net you a lot of reward, and doing it as a group and other groups wanting to take that from you. Yeah, you don't need the real money incentives. Platinum F8 factory event, capture a factory that pumps out 1 F8 a day, no insurance, 100%. 10% rep increase for a week or whatever for the group. That could work too. This is where faction-based warfare, like locking down locations, and this is what I'm hoping that they do with Jumptown. Like, I'm hoping that the increase of the value of maize is indicative of something that they want to try and do with Jumptown, where they're going to balance the economy so that you can make some good credits. If you're grinding it hard enough, you'll make good credits. But then they run Jumptown, and instead of shitting out like 1/8 SCU boxes, they're like shitting out 1 SCU maize boxes, right? And it ends up being that only those who are in control of Jumptown can grab the boxes. So you need to do something at Jumptown to claim it, and only you can turn those boxes in for the criminal side. If you want to be able to just turn the boxes in general, so not have to take over Jumptown and intercept the drugs, then you would have to take on the lawful mission and you'll get a lower payout, but it means that you don't have to seize Jumptown. But if you want to get the higher reward, you have to take Jumptown. You have to claim Jumptown, and then you can start printing out the boxes. Creating an incentive for a group to actually want to stick around. We could jump the people trying to sell from Jumptown after they've already pumped the boxes. Yeah, but I guess I didn't articulate myself well enough. If you've claimed Jumptown, you're going to get more for those boxes because the buyer of those drugs is expecting it to come from you. Whereas if somebody else tries to sell it to them, they'll be like, I'm not paying for those boxes because I had an agreement with someone else. So you're going to get significantly less. You shouldn't have an issue, but you might. That's the thing about it though. Like, if you want to get the most out of it, you're going to have to put more effort in. But that's an example there of how you incentivize PvP. Like, it's the reward needs to be exclusive, not higher. And the benefit of making it exclusive is that the PvE Care Bears that try and get in on these events and just cheese the credits out of it won't be able to. Like, they'll need to actually do the actions in order to get the most out of it. But then players will be incentivized to undo their work to take it over the facility for themselves so that they can then gain the maximum benefit. Bears will still find a way to fucking ruin the PvP events though.
There's no incentives to get people to want to try stuff out, because the trick here is not trying to get the people who are interested in PvP more interested in it. The trick here is to get PvP into the hands of people who want to try it, and you want to scale the risk and the reward depending on how far they go in. And if you incentivize exciting loot and unique gear at the end of, I guess you could say, this PvP meat grinder, then people are going to want to do it more. It's going to want to promote people to get out there. You're going to have much more player interaction, and the health and longevity of your game is just simply going to get better. I mean, we look at games like Dota, Grand Theft Auto, DayZ, all these top games on Twitch. All of it has to do with the interactions of players versus each other and how that plays out in the world. You know, the whole PV.
Do you see Dota? I've never played Dota before, but I thought that was just a MOBA. What has that got to do with survival-based games where competition is like, you know, survival? And Dota is basically LOL. I get that, but I don't understand the game comparisons that he just gave. Like he said, Dota and DayZ as, you know, PvP-based experiences. I get the point that he's trying to make here with regards to like trying to encourage or make PvP experiences more accessible to those who aren't really into it. But I honestly think that he's like overestimating the capacity of what PvP groups will be engaging in. But yeah, like I thought that was a really weird take.
PvE kind of phenomenon where you are in a sandbox. It's PvP, but also you're fighting the world at the same time. This is a really good thing to do, and I think CIG needs to really lean into this kind of direction. And God forbid we get a working economy that actually makes a little bit of sense to incentivize players who want to risk loading up their ships with expensive cargo, getting some people who are interested in combat to protect them so that they can all benefit from a high risk, high reward type situation. I would love to see a moment where you have entire hull Cs loaded with like just Quantanium or something extremely expensive that would take these hauling ships, you know, days to complete the amount of money transactions just on this single load, and to have them support each other, to have PvPers come in and make sure that that ship gets to its location safely is going to be beneficial for everybody. But
well, the incentive behind that, like we've already given the strategy on how you achieve this. Have everybody buy into the fucking load of cargo being moved. Like that sort of experience there. That's how you incentivize it. The pirates are naturally going to be incentivized to fucking go and hit that thing. Quantanium. The whole sea's worth of Quantanium is fucking ridiculous. There's already a solution to this problem. It's just players aren't willing to do it. Like there are examples where players will actually do this. The Slam Rush, I already brought this up. Like the Slam Rush, when we had that, players were using escorts because there was a shit ton of credits being moved. And they wanted to make sure that they actually sold. And they knew that the areas that they were going to were volatile areas where they were more than likely going to end up in a fight. It was quite fun. Unfortunately, they didn't come prepared with enough people. Pirates normally outnumbered them anyway. But then you'd have fights where you'd be hitting a target and then another pirate crew would show up. So you'd be fighting the pirate crew whilst also trying to take the target. So we've already had examples of this shit. I don't understand why like this is apparently something new that CIG needs to try and get in there. CIG already has examples of this. They keep achieving this by making bloody bugs. And yes, they're paying attention and they see this stuff. They don't need to replicate it because they see the results of what they're actually putting in there. PMCs becoming sweet brios. They weren't PMCs, they were just pirates in disguise. There's no such thing as PMCs yet. They're just a different brand of pirate. Their reputation actually means something more and can be quite punishing if you've got a very low criminal reputation. We'll see PMCs engaging in piracy. There's already examples of this shit happening in game. Just players need to do it more.
Low, I guess you could say the low risk, low effort, low reward type shipping. It's not really going to want people to get involved. It's not going to really force people to want to protect those things because the margins are just so small. The second thing that they introduced in ISC was these asteroid stations that are procedurally generated into procedurally generated stations. So you have these internal asteroids like a miniature Grimhix type situation where there are no green zones and whoever gets there first essentially claims them. Now, how these will truly work out, will they be a mission that you pull off a contract and everyone has access to it like a certain kind of mission and everyone gets there? Will it be...
I'm pretty sure that's not how they go at all. They're just mission locations that you can go to. Like, I guess you could consider claiming them. Like if you could hold them and stay on the server? Reputation will never mean anything as there is no limit on how many accounts you can own, but you do have to switch accounts to be able to do something. So there is a level of inconvenience that you have to experience, and then you have to spend time building reputation. You turn out to be on the wrong account, you won't be able to do the thing that you need to do. Because when you have chance encounters, you've got seconds to do what you want to do, not the time to be able to log out, log into the next account, go to the same location to do your thing. I understand what you're saying though there, Alton. It's just, in my experience playing Star Citizen, whenever you have an encounter where you want to do something, you've normally only got minutes to respond. Usually it's actually less than that, seconds. If you want to be playing on your PMC account, you've got to commit to playing on that account. If you want to switch to your pirate account, you've got to accept the fact that you're probably going to miss the opportunity. Yeah, I don't know where the fuck Avenger 1's getting his information about this shit. Grim Hex type deal. Whoever shows up first claims it. Pretty bold fucking statements. I guess you could from a certain point of view, but then you'd need like a decent presence and hope nobody else shows up, and if they do, fucking, that you've got the numbers there to be able to deal with it. Like, I want to be able to do that. I want to find one of these stations and go, hey, like, let's just make this a Mongrel Squad base for a while and see how it goes. Of course. That's how we always roll.
Something that people stumble across themselves, or will it be something more along the lines of it's like an event that pops up under priority? Whatever the case may be, it's likely, in my opinion, that it'll be a contract or some kind of event that pops up every once in a while, and people are able to consolidate on that location, and whoever takes the area, whether they start in space defending it and then they move on to the internal inside the station to eventually reach the gold at the center of the station. Now, they teased a secret to say, like, we don't want to give it away, but I strongly believe that it's likely have something to do with perhaps whenever you get the, I guess you could say the rare loot or the really expensive stuff at the end of the quest, it'll probably set a self-destruct on the asteroid, which will destroy the asteroid, because there has to be some kind of way to destroy the station or get rid of it after the mission has been completed, because once people complete the mission, it has to despawn, a new one has to spawn up somewhere else so that the mission can continue and people can procedurally generate and have these exciting moments.
This now makes me want to actually watch the recent Star Citizen live episode to see if any of what Avenger 1 makes sense. Because this video is like 12 days old, so he's running off ISC the information from inside Star Citizen. I don't remember them fucking mentioning anything like this at all. Just despawn as soon as they leave the area, like procedurally generated asteroid bases and shit like that you can come across. When CIG procedurally generates anything, it's during the creation phase. When they put it into the game, that's it. It's there. It's an asset. I don't remember them saying anything about these sorts of like stations being temporary, which is what fucking Avenger 1's saying. Pretty sure that's not the case, and that you're gonna have chance encounters with other groups. Once you're done there, what you're doing there, that's it. I don't understand why you'd need to destroy it afterwards. One of the exploration videos talked about procedurally generated stations and stuff that we can investigate. Yes, like diverse is big, but I don't think that CIG is going to be procedurally generating content during runtime, like stations and asteroids and things like that. Like if they were, like, I don't remember them mentioning anything like that at all. I could be wrong. Maybe they haven't, I just wasn't paying attention, but I don't remember them saying like, because that's what he's talking about here, is procedurally generating an asteroid base or station like that during runtime and then destroying it in runtime. So this is during the game, you get a mission and the mission just builds an asteroid base. I don't see that working. Well, actually, you could make it work. It'd take a lot of resources on the server side. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know where he's getting this information from, because I don't remember them saying this at all in that Inside Star Citizen episode.
In the persistent universe. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the best ideas, I guess you could say, where you have a high risk area that procedurally generates, that allows for combined operations, space to air to ground, that kind of stuff, which I think is really healthy for the game, because it's not locking it down to popular stations where people are fighting around. You want to keep the PvP somewhere where it's off the beaten path and people choose out of their own decision to go there and take the risk, rather than the risk coming to them and them not being prepared, not wanting, and just, you know, being a difficult experience for them. Even though that's likely still going to happen, because CIG hasn't figured out that the defensive systems that they've put out, the missiles and the turrets and the velocities and all that stuff, just simply are not enough to defend against any kind of basic trained PvP crew that wants to go in and start engaging.
Yes, right now, station defenses are trash. Unless you go to a server that's running at 30 FPS, in which case you do one wrong thing and they fucking wreck you, you know? Like, it seems like he's taking the current state of the game and the poor performance that we're seeing on the fucking servers, and he's going, yeah, buddy, those defenses aren't adequate enough. Like, yeah, no shit, their bloody server's running at like 5 frames a second. The fact that they're even still operating is a fucking achievement in of itself. But, you know, try doing that shit on a server that's at 30 FPS and watch what happens. You're gonna get fucking wrecked. That's kind of what we need for server meshing. Like, that's why we need server meshing, and CIG really shouldn't be committing. They shouldn't be committing to, like, trying to fix that sort of stuff or address any of those sorts of security issues yet, because chances are the systems that they've got now are adequate. And when we get server meshing, we should see a slight performance improvement, enough that we see the effectiveness of the station defenses being consistent enough that they don't need to make any more changes. In fact, they may have to dial it back. But yeah, like, this is just... who said? It just seems like he's rambling. Yeah, I think he's in the rambling stage now.
And like my previous video, we spoke about what's going to probably happen in reality with the jump points, where people are going to queue up in lines, and somehow that is going to, I guess you could say, disincentivize groups of PvPers to come in and start shooting down other groups. They could be loaded with cargo, they could be trying to escape Pyro, whatever the case may be. People are going to get absolutely destroyed at these choke points, and I think CIG has to seriously take a look at how they're going to do this. It's very likely, I hate to say it, it's extremely likely that CIG will put an armistice zone in these areas to the point where you cannot fire and people are just going to be able to queue up and go. It's disappointing because it's a very band-aid fixed for a difficult situation, but I guess we'll have to see as time goes on.
I'm just trying to think, is this the episode that he's talking about? This was the episode before we got the information about the jump gates, right? Because there is an armistice zone around, like, it's a soft armistice zone, but like, there's station defenses there. You end up with a crime state. You can't go through the gate. So you're not incentivized to go and attack other players if you're queuing up to go through the jump gate. Once again, server meshing, we should see a performance bump. So station defenses, static defenses in space should be a lot more potent when we get the server meshing. We was talking about the contested zone. No, he started talking about the jump points and, you know, how players won't want to line up and go to those locations because PvP is going to show up and smack them down, and then CIG is going to have to respond with or overreact by putting in a hard armistice zone around the jump points. Honestly, like, this is this situation where we need to wait until we've got server meshing before we can really start telling CIG, hey, this isn't going to work, you know? Like, oh, based on what we see now, it's not going to work because of this. It's like, well, what we see now is really poor performing servers. The OG's put measures in there, they're just not functioning correctly because the servers are shit. Improve the server performance, and we'll probably see those systems working the way that CIG wants them to and have the effect that we're all expecting them to have anyway. But yes, make sure you all remember, PTU does not affect the PU.
Either way, the PvP lens of this, from my point of view, is contested zones are going to be a meat grinder for new players, and the new, I guess you could say, procedurally generated quest missions where you could take these asteroids, whatever they want to call these things, is the best idea I've seen to get people involved in PvP. But it really comes down to the game's combat has to be exciting and enjoyable for most people to want to get into PvP. And I think we all understand and all know, especially if you've been following this channel, that the state of player versus player combat when it comes to the space fighting side of things has been dramatically dropped to the floor And I think it's at the detriment to everybody who plays the game, including new players and old players. CIG simply has to take responsibility for the absolutely terrible state of the Master Mode's combat system, and they have to start working on it. Probably.
Of course. He starts whinging about Master Modes. That's the problem, guys. PvP has to be enjoyable. He's complaining about Master Modes and PvP, but he's mainly complaining about Master Modes and trying to mask it under the PvP banner. Like, everybody should be engaging in Master Modes, playing it, getting feedback, sending it back to CIG. Succinct and concise feedback for them, to the point, but, you know, like, constructive as well. Master Modes is what influences flight combat, and it doesn't matter if it's PvP-based flight combat or PvE based flight combat. Master Modes is at the root of it. So saying that PvP needs to be more enjoyable or PvP needs to be more fun, so they have to change the flight combat model in order for that to happen. How does that affect flight combat for PvE? Like, the focus should just be on making flight combat a more enjoyable experience, irrespective if it's going to be PvE or PvP orientated. The other side of this is, like, I would like to know what players who have only ever experienced Master Modes, what they think of it, right? You know, players that have never played Star Citizen, never before Master Modes. I want to know what their take is. You know, what do you think of the flight model? I've had it for a while now. You'll be able to get some decent feedback. You know, does it feel good? Why does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Why does it feel bad? And see if they have the same things to say about those who have been involved in the flight model before Master Modes. See if we get the same feedback. Because to be honest, I think there's just a lot of people out there that just can't fucking let go. There's still people out there who say that, what was it, the flight model from 2.6 was the best. Wait, he misspelled asteroids? Fuck, I missed that. That's how much attention I'm paying. It was best when we couldn't fly. Alright, we're almost done. Let's finish this video so we can move on to the next thing.
Probably sooner rather than later, because the excuses that they come up with saying, oh, we don't have time for it. Well, I'm sorry, CIG. You got to start making the time, because if you don't start making the time, I think a lot of players are going to be fed up. So this was my opinion, folks. This was the PvP lens. That's some of the new content coming out. Leave your comments in the chat below. Get involved in the conversation. Tell CIG what you feel about the combat systems in the game right now, so we either make the game the best it can be, or we complain about it and nothing ever happens. If we can get CIG to understand that there's changes that need to be made, then we have hope for Star Citizen in the future. And either way, I'll see all you folks out for Pyro. My name was Avenger1. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Fuck, I'm glad he told me who he was. Felt like I was on his fucking channel. A lot of weird takes. I think I understand some of the angles that he was trying to get at, but they were just executed poorly. Like, this video seems like a whole, like, the sense that I'm trying to get out of this entire video is that he's trying to say DIG needs to try and make PvP more accessible to a wider audience, and that they need to be cognizant of the fact that the content that they're introducing, like the contested zones, aren't going to be conducive to that goal. You know, new players are going to have a poor experience at the contested zones. Here's a hot take for you all. New players shouldn't be spawning in fucking Pyro. That solves that problem. But if we're going to talk about players who don't regularly engage in PvP and trying to encourage them to engage in PvP, the reward needs to be, you know, him trying to say, the reward needs to be great enough to, you know, create PvP. Not really. The reward needs to be exclusive so that only one can have that reward. If you do that, people will fight over it. I guarantee it. People will fight over it if you restrict who can have the reward to only those who are strongest. Yeah, so like the F8, the lightning event. There's a big group of people who prefer FPS combat to flight combat. The contested zones caters to them. But now, so there's this perpetual issue that CIG has when it comes, like, well, any sort of game that will have when it comes to like closed loop systems where you're encouraging like PvP games based gameplay, is that unless you iterate regularly on that closed loop, it will still get stale, even if there's PvP involved. The contested zones, in my opinion, are great for somebody who wants a quick Star Citizen fix. They don't have much time. They're at a station where they can just run down to the contested zone, get a bit of a, you know, Star Citizen fix, do some PvP, loot some shit, and then leave. That's the way I see the contested zones really going. You'll have dedicated groups who will try and go in there and hold it and, you know, like just go around ratting and shit like that. That's, you know, that'll tide them over as well. But there's going to be stuff happening outside of that as well. You know, player bases. Events like Jump Town, except in Pyro. Like, there's going to be more that's going to happen outside of those zones, and you'll be able to get your FPS fixed, but you're going to have to fly there. That's one of the things that I think PRG doesn't do the best when trying to encourage people to get better at flight combat. But right now, like, unless you're heavily into flight, like PvP based flight combat, the AI is still too easy to defeat. However, once we see server performance improve, PRG can then start dialing in the AI so that they're a lot more lethal and potent, and you have to get better at flight combat if you want to do those sorts of things. Or even if you're like trying to get to the location to do your FPS stuff, you know, like you got to fight your way to a bunker before you can get in there and clear it. You're going to have to be able to defeat the AI, and if the AI keeps shitting on you before you even get to the bunker, guess what? You got to get better at flight combat. Or take people with you who are good at flight combat to handle the AI for you while you go down and, you know, do the bunker. That's where teamwork comes into play. But Avenger 1 seems to be very hung up on like the current state of things dictating how things are going to continue going into the next patch, and that CIG needs to make changes because the way that it works now doesn't, you know, work. Like, the examples that he's using, I think, are poor examples. I seriously do think he's forgotten that server meshing changes a lot. We may see an improvement in performance for the servers that then starts making certain systems that are failing right now and, you know, not threatening to players to actually become the genuine threats that they're supposed to be. And then COG doesn't have to lift a finger beyond making sure that server performance is higher than what it was before. Hit that 30 FPS for server performance. They're doing that. What they'll probably end up doing is working out if they need to dial back the lethality of station defenses, the lethality of FPS AI and flight combat AI. That was Avenger 1's pretty Disasters and Pyro PvP zones, the reality. I think we've definitely got different realities going on here.